this is Debbie from Lime Doodle Design, and for my Doodling with Debbie feature this month, I'm creating a messy watercolored background using the Wake Up and Makeup set from Simon Says Stamp. The joy of a background such as this is it is simple to paint. You don't need to worry too much about being precise, with a loose messy style adding to the effect. The idea for this card started when I was with a group of crafting friends and started to play around with the set. I sort of liked how this card went, but I started to get a bit grungy and I didn't think that suited makeup. Also, I didn't like the fact that there was only 2 pops of blue, so today I'm going to redo this panel, but keeping the mistakes I made last time in mind. I'm going to use a wider selection of the images from the Wake Up and Makeup set and plan to loosely watercolour around the makeup for a fun fresh teal blue background. And as for the makeup, I'll stick to a warm colour palette of reds, pinks, oranges and yellows to contrast with the background. So to get started with this card, I placed a piece of cold pressed watercolour card in the full-size Misty. I'm using the full size rather than the mini so that I can have the images off the edge to create a dynamic pattern. I arranged a selection of the images, keeping them close together but not overlapping, and then varying the angles. I stamped them twice in VersaFine ONYX black ink to get a good impression on the textured card. You'll notice that the images I used in the previous attempt I didn't clean, and I prefer to do this. With all the best will in the world, when I clean stamps I find I get lint or something similar on them and they don't stamp as cleanly the second time around. However, I found no harm in leaving them with the ink on, and it means I get a good impression each time. Now, once the stamps are freshly inky, I use a piece of acetate to protect my card while I arrange the stamps for a second time. This way you don't get any accidental inky smudges. Once the new position is determined, I then pick up the stamps with the door of the Misty and remove the acetate before stamping onto the card. I filled in any larger gaps between the makeup with the heart image and then tape the card to a board to prepare for watercolouring. This will help prevent the card from warping if I add lots of water. I'm not going overboard with the water for this background, but I will be painting most of it, so it's probably better to be safe than sorry. Thinking back to my first attempt at this card, I liked how I'd added the effect of makeup sprinkled onto the background and the mascara streaks too, and so I added those in first before filling in the rest of the background with a loose teal blue wash. I didn't worry about covering every inch of the background, but loosely moved the colour around, leaving gaps around the makeup. I've zoomed in a bit so you can see the painting better, and just so you know, this part of the video is sped up 10 times faster than my normal painting speed. As a reference, I think this card took about an hour and 20 minutes in total to make. While I'm painting, I have a tissue in one hand, so if there are areas where the colour has gone down too intensely for my liking, I can sop up some of the colour for a softer look. I certainly did this for some of the hearts and that dropper bottle too. The colour on the bottle wasn't quite what I was after, so I dampened the paint again with a wet brush and then picked up some of the colour. I'm using a dilute black for the caps and areas which I think would be silver. And then for the makeup, I'm using some lovely warm colours of reds, oranges and pinks. In the same way for the background, I'm really trying not to go for a precise look. I'm adding blocks of colour and not painting right to the edges for that messy look. And the result is that this watercolour background was really quick and simple to create. Moving on, and I wanted to add some splatter in places. Firstly for the makeup brushes, and I chose a dilute red for this, and generally over the whole panel in teal to match the background. Then I added more splatter in the form of my favourite Perfect Pearl solution, and this adds a lovely sparkly finish to the card. As the teal background had dried, its colour had lightened slightly, and so to balance with the depth of colour of the makeup pieces, I added a second layer of teal and then more Perfect Pearl splatter to finish. I dried the panel with a heat tool and then used a white gel pen to add a few highlight details. With the background now complete, I ran it through my die cutting machine with a WONKY rectangle die for a fun stitch detail to the edges. And then for the sentiment, I picked out the Hello Gorgeous greeting and lined it up on a piece of black card in the Misty. I treated the card with an anti-static powder bag to prevent embossing powder randomly sticking everywhere, and then stamped the sentiment in clear embossing ink before sprinkling with white embossing powder and heat setting. I trimmed the piece to a banner and added foam adhesive to the back. I then removed the adhesive backer and added some silver thread I'd looped around my fingers to the back. I then added the sentiment to the watercolour background offset to the lower left and using a T-square ruler to ensure I had it on straight. I then added more foam adhesive to the back of the panel and added it to a side folding A2 card base cut from ivory card. I find this is a good colour match for the warm white of Watercolor card. As a final accent, you can't beat a bit of bling, and so I added a trio of opalescent diamonds from Little Things by Lucy's cards and kept them in place with Gina K Connect glue. And here's a look at the first attempt next to my finished card, and I certainly prefer the brighter colours and teal background of the final version. And that completes its messy watercolour background using the Wake Up and Makeup set. On the STAX blog you'll find a coordinating blog post as well as details of the supplies I've used today. If you want to find me, I blog over at limedutydesign.com. I want to thank you for joining me today, and I'll see you next time.